95815. Longitude minus.
Oh, Daniel, wake up, please! Daniel, wake up!
It was a horrible car crash with a couple trapped in the wreckage. Cops investigated it as an accident until the boyfriend woke up in the hospital, and what they say he told them is shocking.
No, you'll throw it all off. You'll throw it all off and Lily fall.
In the middle, yeah.
Oh shit. You gotta do the middle one.
No, it's gonna go off.
Oh, he's got it.
It's your turn.
A man wakes up from a coma, points his finger at his pregnant girlfriend, and dies. But before he goes, he makes sure she goes down with him. This is the story of Daniel Waterman, a 22-year-old father-to-be who survived a 95-mile-per-hour crash into a tree, lived through 8 months of hell in a hospital bed, and used his last bit of strength to tell investigators exactly what happened the night his girlfriend decided his life was worth less than her rage. Vehicular homicide, that's what they charged her with. And it all started with a text message from another woman. You're watching Shadowed Crimes TV. We tell the stories that need to be told. Domestic violence, toxic relationships, and the lives lost behind closed doors. No sugarcoating, no excuses. Just the truth. If you're new here, subscribe and join us as we shed light on shadowed stories. Daniel Waterman was 22 years old. Born and raised in New York, he'd eventually made his way down to Florida, trying to build something for himself. And somewhere along the way, he met Leah Mumby. She was 24. They started dating, and like a lot of young couples, they had their ups and downs. But by early 2025, things were getting serious between them. Real serious, because Leah was pregnant. Now, here's where you need to pay attention. Daniel was excited about becoming a father. His family would later say he couldn't stop talking about it, couldn't wait to meet his baby girl. This man was ready to step up. But like a lot of relationships, there were cracks underneath. Jealousy, insecurity, arguments that started small and grew into something bigger. And on one night in February, those cracks turned into a crater. February 9th, 2025. Super Bowl weekend. Most people are watching the game, eating wings, placing bets. Daniel and Leah, they're in a car together on Interstate 95, Flagler County, Florida, and they are fighting. Not just bickering, fighting. Because Daniel had just found out Leah was pregnant, and at the same time, he'd gotten a text message from a woman back in New York. Now, we don't know exactly what that text said, but whatever it was, it set Leah off. She's driving. He's in the passenger seat, and according to what Daniel would later tell investigators, this argument went from heated to dangerous real quick. Leah started driving erratically, swerving, speeding up, slowing down. Daniel's trying to calm her down, trying to get her to pull over, trying to figure out what's happening, but she's not hearing him. She's in her feelings, and she's behind the wheel. At some point, Daniel said she slowed the car down. He thought maybe she was pulling over, maybe she was cooling off. So he tried to get out. He reached for the door, trying to escape the situation before it got worse. And that's when Leah made a choice. She looked at him, and she said, "I don't care what happens. You'll get what you deserve." Then she floored it. The speedometer climbed. 70, 80, 90. And according to the crash report, by the time that Honda left the road and aimed straight for a cluster of mangrove trees, Leah Mumby was doing 95 miles per hour. She didn't hit the brakes. She didn't swerve to miss the trees. She drove them right into it, head on. And Daniel, sitting in that passenger seat with no control, no way out, took the full force of that impact. Girl, make it make sense. You're mad about a text, so you crash the car? At 95 miles per hour? With your man in the crashes, seat next to you, and you're pregnant? The math isn't mathing. The crash was violent. Metal twisting, glass shattering, airbags exploding. When that Honda finally stopped moving, it was wrapped around those trees like the earth had swallowed it whole. Leah was conscious, screaming, panicking. She's yelling for Daniel to wake up, but Daniel's not moving. His neck is broken. His back is fractured. His face is a mess of blood and trauma. He's not waking up because he can't wake up. And here's something wild. Daniel's iPhone, the one that sent that text message that started this whole thing, it had a feature that detects severe car crashes. The phone sensed the impact, and it automatically dialed 911. No one had to press a button. The phone did it on its own. The dispatcher picks up, and there's an automated message. The owner of this iPhone was in a severe car crash and is not responding to their phone. First responders rushed to the scene. When they arrived, they found Leah alert, crying, hysterical, and they found Daniel barely clinging to life. Paramedics worked fast, pulling him from the wreckage, stabilizing his spine, trying to keep him breathing. He was airlifted to the hospital with injuries so severe that doctors weren't sure he'd make it through the night. Spinal injury, head trauma, facial fractures. This man was broken in ways that don't just heal. Leah was injured too, but nothing like Daniel. She survived with cuts and bruises, and so did the baby she was carrying. And when investigators showed up to ask her what happened, you know what she said? She said she didn't remember, couldn't recall what led to the crash. She just remembered waking up in pain. Anyways, that's what she told them. At the time, cops had no reason not to believe her. It looked like an accident. A terrible, tragic accident. People in a car. One loses control. Both almost die. Happens every day. Right? So they filed it away as a crash, took their notes, and moved on. Daniel was in a coma. Leah was walking free. And for months, that's how it stayed. Daniel Waterman wasn't supposed to survive. That's what the doctors thought when they first saw him. The damage was too severe. Broken neck, fractured spine, traumatic brain injury, facial bones shattered. They put him in a medically induced coma, just to give his body a chance to stabilize. His family rushed to Florida from New York, and when they got to that hospital room and saw their son hooked up to machines, breathing through tubes, they didn't know if they'd ever hear his voice again. But here's the thing about Daniel. He was a fighter. Day after day, week after week, his family sat by his bedside. His mother, his aunt, people who loved him. And every single day, they prayed he'd open his eyes. Not just open them, but come back to them. Because a coma doesn't just take your consciousness. It takes your presence, your personality, everything that makes you you. Leah, meanwhile, was recovering. And she was still pregnant. The baby had survived the crash. And as the weeks went by, she continued with her life, free, no charges, no consequences. Because as far as law enforcement knew, this was still just an accident, a horrible, tragic accident. But then something happened that nobody expected. In May, 3 months after that crash, Daniel woke up. Now, when I say he woke up, I don't mean he sat up in bed and started talking like nothing happened. Nah, this man couldn't speak. The injuries to his head and neck were so severe that his voice was gone. He couldn't form words. couldn't tell anyone what he was feeling, what he remembered, what he needed. Imagine that. You wake up from 3 months of darkness, and you can't even say your own name. But Daniel's mind? His mind was still there, sharp, aware, and he remembered everything. Investigators got word that Daniel had regained consciousness, and they knew they had to talk to him. They needed to know what happened that night. So they came to the hospital, and they brought something with them. A letter board. One of those boards with the alphabet on it, where you point to letters one by one to spell out words. It's slow, it's exhausting. But it works. And Daniel? He started pointing. Letter by letter, Daniel Waterman spelled out the truth, and what he told investigators was chilling. He said that on the night of February 9th, he and Leah were in the car together, and they got into an argument. A bad one. He'd just found out. She was pregnant, and at the same time, he'd received a text message from a woman back in New York. Leah saw that text, and she lost it. Daniel spelled out that Leah started driving recklessly, swerving, speeding. He was scared. He was telling her to stop, to calm down, to pull over. But she wouldn't listen. She was angry. She was hurt. And she was behind the wheel of a moving vehicle. At one point, she slowed down. Daniel thought maybe she was coming to her senses, so he tried to get out of the car. He reached for the door handle, trying to escape before things got worse. But Leah sped back up. And then, according to what Daniel communicated, she said those words, the ones that would haunt this case. "I don't care what happens. You'll get what you deserve." And then she drove them straight into those trees, on purpose. No brakes, no hesitation, just rage and a gas pedal. Investigators wrote down every letter Daniel pointed to, every word, every detail. And when they stepped back and looked at what he'd spelled out, they realized this wasn't an accident at all. This was an assault. This was attempted murder. And the weapon? A 2,000-pound Honda going 95 miles per hour. Oh wow. So this man woke up from a coma, couldn't even speak, and still found a way to make sure his story got told. That's strength. That's determination. Because Daniel knew something. He knew his time was running out. His body was breaking down. The injuries were too much. And if he didn't tell the truth now, Leah was going to walk away from this like nothing ever happened. In July, 5 months after the crash, investigators finally had enough. They issued a warrant for Leah Mumby's arrest. The charges? Reckless driving causing serious bodily injury and aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. That deadly weapon being the car she used to nearly kill Daniel. When they arrested her, she was still pregnant, still carrying the child that Daniel would never get to meet. Leah was booked and later released on bond, and according to reports, she pleaded not guilty. She maintained that she didn't remember what happened before the crash, that she just woke up in pain and didn't know how they ended up in those trees. But now there was a problem with that story, because Daniel remembered, and he'd told investigators everything. His family, they were relieved that charges were finally filed, but they also knew it wasn't enough. Reckless driving? Aggravated. Battery? Sure. But Daniel was still in that hospital bed, still fighting for his life, still suffering from injuries that were never going to fully heal. And his family wanted justice that matched the crime. They wanted the charges to reflect what Leah had actually done, because this wasn't just reckless. This was intentional. Daniel stayed in the hospital. Months turned into a routine. Physical therapy, medications, surgeries. His family never left his side. They were there every single day, watching their son fight a battle he never should have had to fight. And through it all, Daniel kept saying the same thing. He just wanted to go home. He wanted to leave that hospital, leave the machines, leave the pain, and go home. But his body wasn't cooperating. The spinal injuries weren't healing the way doctors hoped. The trauma to his brain was taking a toll. And as the summer turned into fall, it became clear that Daniel wasn't getting better. He was getting worse. His mother, his aunt, his whole family, they could see it. The man they loved was slipping away, piece by piece, day by day. And through all of this, Leah Mumby was out on bond, living her life, pregnant with Daniel's child, preparing to give birth to a baby that Daniel desperately wanted to meet but might never get the chance to hold. Let me tell you something. There's a special kind of cruelty in watching someone you love deteriorate while the person responsible for their suffering walks free. Daniel's family had to sit with that every day. They had to watch him suffer, knowing that the woman who put him in that bed was out in the world, unbothered, waiting for a trial that might not come fast enough. On October 8th, 2025, 8 months after that crash, Daniel Waterman died. The injuries were too much. His body finally gave out, and just like that, a man who was supposed to become a father, who was supposed to have a whole life ahead of him, was gone. But his death changed everything. The moment Daniel died, the legal landscape shifted. What started as reckless driving and aggravated battery suddenly became something much more serious. Because now, there was a body. Now, there was a death directly linked to those injuries from February. And prosecutors weren't playing around anymore. On October 24th, 2025, just over 2 weeks after Daniel's death, Leah Mumby was charged with vehicular homicide. Not manslaughter, not negligent homicide. Vehicular homicide. The state of Florida looked at the evidence, looked at Daniel's testimony from that letter board, looked at the crash data showing she was accelerating into those trees, and they said this is murder with a car. Leah was booked again. This time, the bond was set at $150,000. She posted it and was released. But the stakes had completely changed. She wasn't just facing a few years anymore. Vehicular homicide in Florida? That's serious time. That's the kind of charge that could put her behind bars for the rest of her life if convicted. And Daniel's family? They were satisfied, not happy. Because how can you be happy when your son is dead? But satisfied that finally, the charges matched the crime. His family's attorney spoke about it, saying they believed the charges filed against Leah Mumby were the correct charges. Because anything less would have been an insult to Daniel's memory. This man spent 8 months fighting to stay alive. Used his last bit of strength to spell out what she did to him, and then died from those injuries. If that's not vehicular homicide, then what is?
Accusing his girlfriend of intentionally crashing their car in a jealous rage. Les Trent has the details.
A young couple has been in a horrible car accident. Police say this Honda was going 95 miles an hour before it slammed into a thicket of mangrove trees. 24-year-old Leah Mumby is screaming for help. She believes her boyfriend, 22-year-old Daniel Waterman, is dead.
395815. Longitude minus.
Oh, Daniel, wake up, please! Daniel, wake up!
Leah is not aware that Daniel's iPhone has automatically called 911.
The owner of this iPhone was in a severe car crash and is not responding to their phone.
Daniel took the brunt of the crash sitting in the passenger seat, suffering a broken neck and back. Doctors put him in a medically induced coma. At first, police thought it was a tragic accident. But then, in a moment straight out of a movie, when Daniel Waterman woke from the coma, he told them it was not an accident. He couldn't speak, but with the help of a special letterboard, he slowly printed out a tale that has heads spinning. His girlfriend, he wrote, tried to kill him. He communicated that Leah had just told him she was pregnant. He said she was also jealous about texts he'd received from another woman. Then he literally spelled out for them that Leah drove off the highway and slammed into the trees on purpose. "I don't care what happens, you'll get what you deserve," he quoted her as saying. After 8 months of battling to stay alive, Daniel died. I spoke to his mother and aunt.
It was something that was so heartbreaking as a mom. It's like, how could someone do this to my son?
Leah Mumby was arrested as she arrived at the hospital to visit Daniel. The charge, vehicular homicide.
There's no doubt in my mind that it was anything but an intentional accident.
Now, here's where it gets tricky. Leah Mumby has pleaded not guilty to the original charges of reckless driving and aggravated battery. As of now, it's unclear what her plea is for the vehicular homicide charge, but based on her pattern, it's likely she's maintaining her innocence. Her story hasn't changed. She claims she doesn't remember what happened before the crash, just woke up in pain. No memory of the argument, no memory of the text message, no memory of Daniel trying to escape, and no memory of her allegedly saying, "I don't care what happens. You'll get what you deserve." But the prosecution has something powerful. They have Daniel's testimony, spelled out letter by letter on that board while he was lying in a hospital bed, unable to speak, but fully aware of what happened to him. They have crash data showing the car was accelerating, not braking, when it hit those trees. They have evidence that Leah didn't even try to stop, and they have a motive: jealousy over a text message, anger over a pregnancy, rage that turned a car into a weapon. The defense will likely argue that it was an accident, that Leah lost control, that emotions were high, and she made a terrible mistake. But mistakes don't usually involve speeding up when someone's trying to escape your car. Mistakes don't usually involve threats right before impact, and mistakes definitely don't leave a man dead 8 months later. This case is going to come down to one question. Do you believe Daniel? Do you believe what he spelled out on that letterboard? Because if you do, then this isn't an accident. This is murder. And then there's the baby. According to reports, Leah Mumby gave birth to Daniel's daughter right around the time of his death. Some sources say it was the day after he died. Others say it was shortly after the upgraded charges were filed. Either way, the timing is devastating. Daniel wanted to be a father. His family said he couldn't stop talking about it. He was excited. He was ready. And now, his daughter is here, and he'll never meet her. But Daniel's family isn't letting that baby grow up without knowing who her father was. They're fighting for custody. It's pending a paternity test, but once that's confirmed, they want that little girl. And honestly, can you blame them? They don't want their son's daughter raised by the woman accused of killing him. They don't want her growing up in a home where her mother might be serving time for vehicular homicide. They want to give that baby the love and the legacy that Daniel would have given her himself. Daniel's family has made it clear. They will teach that little girl everything about her father. They'll tell her about his smile, his personality, the way he couldn't wait to meet her. They'll carry on his memory. They'll make sure she knows that her dad loved her before she was even born, and that he fought for 8 months to stay alive, partly because he wanted to meet her so badly. A GoFundMe was set up to help cover Daniel's medical bills. The expenses from 8 months in the ICU, surgeries, physical therapy, all of it. His family is drowning in debt from trying to keep him alive, and now they're preparing for a funeral and a custody battle. It's too much, but they're pushing forward because that's what Daniel would have wanted. This case is a reminder of how quickly love can turn into something dangerous. How jealousy, insecurity, and rage can transform an argument in a car into a death sentence. Daniel Waterman was 22 years old. He had his whole life in front of him. He was about to be a father, and in one moment of anger, his girlfriend allegedly decided that her feelings mattered more than his life. But here's what Leah Mumby didn't count on. She didn't count on Daniel surviving long enough to tell his story. She didn't count on him waking up from that coma with his mind intact and his memory sharp. She didn't count on him being strong enough to point at letters on a board, one by one, until the whole truth came out. And she definitely didn't count on him becoming the witness that would put her behind bars. Daniel fought for 8 months. He endured pain most of us can't imagine. And he made sure that justice would be served, even if he wasn't around to see it. That's not just strength. That's love. Love for his family. Love for his unborn daughter. And maybe even love for the truth. Because he knew that without his testimony, Leah would have walked away from this. Now his family is left to pick up the pieces, to raise his daughter, to keep his memory alive, and to sit in a courtroom one day and watch as the woman he once loved is held accountable for taking him away from them. Period. This is Shadowed Crimes TV. If this story got to you, hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, share this video, because cases like this, they need to be told. Victims like Daniel, they deserve to be remembered. And children like his daughter, they deserve to know their parents fought for them, even when the world tried to take that away. Stay safe out there. And remember, love shouldn't hurt, and it definitely shouldn't kill.